Well, it started actually with Judge Ferguson, who came on the court at the same time I did. He had a wanting to have at least a place of holding court here in Orange County.
At that time, it was important to have a courthouse in Santa Ana because the only place of holding court for the entire Central District was Los Angeles, and greater populations were moving particularly south and east. Orange County had quite a population increase, Riverside and San Bernardino counties as well.
Before there was talk of the courthouse being built, there was discussion about Orange County becoming a place of holding court. And in order to have a place of holding court, there had to be some facility.
There was an interest in the Spurgeon building, and then there was the Masonic Lodge. GSA didn't like the idea of using these old buildings, so we didn't have their support at that time. In the meantime, my staff found out some information. That is that GSA can expend up to $600,000 a year, or at least at that time. That doesn't have to be in a special bill that has to go through both House, Senate, and President's signature. That made a big difference because we found out through further discussions that a modular building could be built and rented out for a 10-year period at less than $600,000. Some of the judges at first just said, we are not going to hold court in a trailer.
The first time that I saw our trailers, I did not like them initially from viewing them outside. Once inside, you sort of forgot about that you were in a modular facility. There was a lot of discussion among my colleagues about who would actually be resident in Orange County. We determined that there would not be an assignment process utilized, but instead asked for volunteers. And we had one of our judges who later became the chief judge, Alice Marie Stadler, who volunteered and became then the first of our judges to be here permanently.
When we got the modular buildings, we had a U.S. attorney. We had a federal public defender. We had real federal practice in Orange County. Even though it was designated only as a place of holding court, we still had those support groups. It's a coming of age of a metropolis area.
1988, in November, I got elected to Congress. I'd worked in the White House as a lawyer for President Reagan just before that. And I got onto the Committee on Public Works and Transportation. That was one of my first committees, along with the Budget Committee. And they have a subcommittee on public buildings and grounds that, as it turns out, authorizes all new courthouses in the United States. So spring of 1990, I got 2 breaks in the subcommittee on public buildings and grounds. The first was they had a hearing on some possible new sites for courthouses, and I was included in that hearing. I got a chance to talk about Orange County. I got a lot of assistance from the Orange County Bar Association, from the Orange County chapter of the Federal Bar Association. Andy Guilford was involved in this.
You know, when you come in as president, you kind of figure out what you might do, and I thought what I might do is preach the gospel of Orange County around the state and let people know what was going on, let people know our needs, let people know where our needs weren't getting met. And then part of it is letters written calling for the building of this courthouse. We're the 5th largest county in the United States of America, and perhaps the 5th largest county in the United States of America could use a federal courthouse.
I got a phone call from Congressman Norm Mineta, and he said, Jerry, I know you've put your heart and soul into the federal courthouse in Santa Ana, so how bad do you want it? And I said, well, I really, really want it. And he said, well, Representative Chris Cox has a bill to name it the Ronald Reagan Courthouse. How do you feel about that? And I said, well, I think we need the courthouse. I'd rather see it say the Jerry Patterson Courthouse, but that's not going to happen.
Once the courthouse was going to be named after Ronald Reagan, it was completely bulletproof from any funding cuts. There was nobody politically that was going to take that kind of a risk to try to eliminate a courthouse in Orange County named after Ronald Reagan. Those would be fighting words.
So starting in '91, we got real money for this project. $250,000 in the fall of 1991 for design funding. And of course, once you get a design, you're off to the races. You can hire architects, and the thing goes from idea to reality.
I got a call from Judge Reel saying to me that, you're the chairman of the building committee, and he says, we're going to start to look for a site in Santa Ana for the new federal courthouse.
I think all of our committee was in agreement that this should be the location where it is now, because that was the seat of government, that's where the public expected it to be, and public perception was very important in the acceptance of the court, I believe.
We wanted to make sure that our voice was heard by GSA in terms of the design of the court and what went into the court in terms of clerk's office space, courtrooms, how the courtrooms were designed, sight lines and so forth, which were important to us.
We had the groundbreaking ceremony, not only to celebrate the event, but to just kind of show the general community that there is a lot of support for a federal courthouse in Orange County. We were lucky enough to have one of our committee members who had a contact with Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. We did contact her chambers, and she graciously agreed, and that really was a great way for us to start off.
There is a concept in designing a federal court that part of what you want to do is meet people's expectations of what they expect to see in a court. They come there to resolve their legal matters, and the image they have and the expectations they have are very important. A courthouse should have steps, and so they designed this one so it had steps. A courthouse should have columns if you can possibly work those in, and so they worked in columns in various different ways.
The courtrooms are a dark American cherry wood. The judges were very adamant that they liked the feel of tradition, that the dark wood and the warmth that imparts. And some of probably the best detailing that I've seen in any courtrooms.
The interesting thing about the ceiling was, if you remember, we didn't know how the sound would be with the design of the ceiling that we wanted in the courtrooms. And there was a lot of discussion and a lot of, I guess, input with respect to whether this would work. And we were insistent that we wanted to have this nice dome type of ceiling in the courtroom, and it turned out to work.
And we had employed, I believe, a sound engineer to work on the sound aspects of this. And the sound engineer also took into consideration the types of building materials that were going to be used for the reflection of the sound waves off the wall.
And there's a lot of paneling in the courtroom. And the paneling, if you look at it, the individual panels have a slight curve to them so that the sound will not bounce back, but will be dispersed off of them, and it won't act like a sounding board. And they were very careful about how this curve would be and what degree of curve there would be, so that the sound within the room wouldn't be like an echo chamber or wouldn't be like in a shower. We'd assumed that a carpet would just come off the roll someplace and we'd be presented with some samples and we would choose. And that's not how it's done. With a job of this size, they say, no. You tell us what you want and we will manufacture a carpet that will fit that. And so they gave us the option of designing this carpet, which we did.
The architects made a number of proposals to us, kind of run-of-the-mill stuff that you would see, and the judges kept on saying, no, you don't get it. This is a courthouse. It has to be something that elevates it.
We wanted something to make a real lasting impression. And it was designed to have the emblem that we have in there. And that was Gary's idea. He wanted something special and spectacular that would lend to the ambiance of the federal presence.
We're concerned now because we know we'll never be able to replicate it, and so we try our very best to take care of it. Well, at the front of the building, we have two impressive sculptures flanking the steps on our entry.
The power of the law and the wisdom of the law. The male figure is armed with a sword, and symbols of the power of the law are around him. The female figure has an open book that she's holding, and the open book is intended to represent the book of the law. She has law books at her side and an owl at her feet representing wisdom. Both figures are very classical figures, and that means they don't have any clothes. However, the artist has handled it very carefully with placement of some scarves and various different things. But we were concerned about what the public's reaction might be. So I thought the perfect one to ask about this was Alice Marie Stotler, who could tell us from a woman's point of view if she had any concerns about that. And I called her up to ask her if that would cause, in her view, any difficulty, and her reaction was, hell no, put it in. She thought it was just great.
There was this big discussion. Judge Taylor said to the architects, well, the building front, the entrance has to face the Civic Center because that's what we're a part of. And then there was this other part of our thinking that, well, the building entrance really has to face downtown because we're trying to engage the public and we're trying to relate to the downtown. And so architects, you figure it out, you know, but they're basically 180 degrees from each other. And they came up with this idea of an entry pavilion shaped somewhat like a piano, with the wide end facing the Civic Center and the narrow end facing the town. And that way they felt they were addressing both of them.
The construction of that gave us a huge wall that was available for a gigantic mural, which is one of the highlights of the courthouse. John Valadez, a very well-known mural artist, was commissioned to do this. We knew that Ronald Reagan's name was going to be associated with the courthouse. We asked him to please include Ronald Reagan in the painting, and so he did. And it is rumored that there are other presidents who are there in the mural as well. And if you study it carefully, you can spot them. The artist never would confess that there were other presidents there for sure, but he would smile and say, well, maybe there's some others in there.
It's very significant for any vibrant community to have a federal presence. Citizens should not have to travel 50 or 60 miles to get to federal facilities where they would be doing business.
The community of Orange County was given the opportunity to have a federal courthouse. It was very important because a federal court is not a local entity. The philosophy of federal judges is a national philosophy, not moved by local interest.
We started to see a dynamic rise in litigation the day that the courthouse opened. And it was really a matter of getting federal judges into this courthouse. So as we increased our judicial presence, the United States Attorney's Office, the Federal Public Defender, probation, staff, all rose. When we had that presence, the law firms grew. The business was here. It was just driving to another location. And crime was always here. And so we were able to keep those criminal prosecutions in Orange County, which was a tremendous benefit to the victims of crime, our local police departments. We're not Silicon Valley, we're Silicon Beach. Huge intellectual property going on at UC Irvine, Broadcom. So the courthouse now is robust, it's growing, and it's growing synonymously with this county as it's robust and growing.